Hello, good evening. Welcome to Chess Comedy Books 37, in which we take a light-hearted look at the serious world of chess. I promised some time ago to do ones to do with the Polgars, because when I did their one about books by Hungarian masters or grandmasters, I deliberately missed out the three girls. Well, here they are. This is a book which Cathy Forbes wrote quite some years ago, and after it had been written, she got into a little bit of trouble with the Polgars. I'm not really sure the nature of their complaint. This was written 30 years ago. She writes about her late son, who doesn't have to be a genius. It's quite a good book. Cathy was a much underrated player, and the Polgars were Hungarian, born to a pair of Hungarian teachers, who deliberately wed in order to have a family whom they could dedicate to chess. Such an experiment has not been done before or since, to my knowledge. And you know what? I'm quite pleased about that. They all of them achieved worldwide fame, but I'm not sure what else was on the cards for them and what sort of lives they have in reality led. I simply don't know. Some of them, one of them's in Israel, one of them's in the United States. They do go back to Hungary. I'll show you the picture again. Cathy's book is quite good. I would have said it's, I'm a bit biased because I'm rather fond of Cathy, actually. But, it's got, I don't know how many annotated games, maybe about 40 or so. Story of three young Hungarian girls who have taken the chess world by storm. They certainly did that. All three achieved grandmaster results in their teens. All three won international competitions ahead of male professionals twice their age. Yes, again, that's true. Obviously, it was hoped that one or more of them would become either world champion or become a candidate, but it didn't quite work out like that. But for all of that, they continue to brighten up the chess world. They continue to brighten up the world. And in that regard, it's rather nice. There we are. I interviewed one of them, and she sent me a book to thank me. Didn't have to do that, did she? When Judit Polgar retired, I can't help but say this, the BBC, excuse me, I'll just have a little drop of coffee, thought it was a bit of a story, rather than her just simply laying down her pawns, and got in contact with me and said, you know, what's your take on this? And would you like to speak on the news, the 6 o'clock news? And I said, yes, for £1,000 I would. And I passed it across to Twick, Mark over there. And he passed it across in turn to Malcolm, who did in fact speak on the 6 o'clock news. This is the 3 volumes which were written about, which were written by Judit Polgar. And I can assure you, even though I'm probably about to be cut to ribbons by the harshness of the critics, that this was written by her and not by a ghost. It's a really lovely book. I'm not the biggest fan, and they won't mind my saying that, of quality chess. I'm not a strong player. I can't always appreciate the latest changes in opening theory or whatever. But this is really has tips in it and insights which are useful for every level of player. But you have got to put a bit of work into it. These are lessons. They are not, or some funny little thing. But it does contain, I know that I spoke to a viewer of this channel, Mark, and he said to me he thought there were too many photographs. Well, all I can say is maybe, but also that it doesn't crowd out the material. Since they all three travel so widely, you lose nothing with this. Just about all the modern players, from Hungarian nationals right through to, Karpov, Kasparov, they played them all. I mean, there's a film of Korchnoi playing Blitz with one of them, and he lost. Oh, I will never lose to you again, and smashes the pieces down on the board. And similarly, I remember when Sophie played against Smyslov in the veterans versus ladies match, which was staged, and it was staged in London, and I went to it. And he extended his, by then he was, perhaps 70 or something. He extended very courteously his hand to her. And she took it, and he swooped up with it and kissed her hand. And then he beat her 2-0. There we are. What a family. What a family group. I know that a friend of mine, this was many, many years ago, over 30 years ago, Mrs. Polgar, sent a list of bulletins that she wanted, and one of them was Cheltenham 1946. Well, if you know what Cheltenham 1946 is, or even Cheltenham 1945, and I've got the dates wrong, or maybe she got the dates wrong, you write to the Polgars, not to me, and tell me. I can never get coffee right. Either too sweet, too bitter. Here she is with different colour hair, brandishing a cup. This is called How I Beat Fischer's Record, and the record is not how young he was when he became a grandmaster. Fischer lived in a very different era from Judit here, and he got the title as US closed champion. He got a place in the interzonal, and he qualified from the interzonal to, he was born in 1943, and he got a place in the candidates and an automatic, and should have done, grandmaster title. For the young lady here, she would have had to got it via a somewhat more circuitous route, no less decisive in her actions, I feel sure, and very worthwhile. That record had stood for all those years, and she picked it up and screwed it up like a piece of paper, and she threw it away. So she broke the record. Since then, a number of young prodigies have done similarly, but it took her to do it and to prove what could be done for the ladies' game. And here she is, being rather schoolmarmy. I think perhaps she was a bit off colour that day. Whether I'm right and whether I'm wrong doesn't matter. This is More Games by Judit Polgar, talking about the King's Indian defence. And here she is, talking about Don Miguel. Who do you think that is then, the old man there with her? Do you know? Once again, I'm not going to tell you. I'll put the answer somewhere. It's not a very difficult question to answer. He's no longer with us. Here she is analysing with Anand. Another young player that rose to fame in the 1980s and became world champion. So that's not too bad, is it? This is the last of the trilogy. A Game of Queens. Once again, it's published by Quality Chess. It was published 7 years ago. I can't think of any book, collection of books, which more encapsulate or exemplify the modern game than these three. I know I was coming home in the car. Someone was kind enough to give me a lift. My friend Mike from the British Championships in Norwich that year. And he said to me, could I make some recommendations for some of the juniors who he looks after and is a member of Ashstead Chess Club, blah, blah, blah. And I splurted out some book titles. And he said, why haven't you included Larsson's games and Fischer's games? And I said, I thought those were a good inspiration, but I don't think they actually teach you things because A, they're so advanced, and B, they're not intended to be teaching manuals. Well, these are halfway to being teaching manuals, but they're also halfway, not just because the photographs are lovely, but they are also contain elements of education or lighter touches. I mean, the very first example in the very first book, she shows a position, and obviously it's a good idea for you yourself as reader to look at it first before you read the text. And what she is actually demonstrating is that there are some positions where no matter how desperate you are to win the game, there may not be a win there. It doesn't always indicate. Here she is with the now world champion, Magnus Carlsen. And I suppose they're in the London Eye. I think so. She's had her hair done again. I don't think that particularly suits in that style. I don't suppose he's bothered one with the other. I bet she would be, and so would I. Very, very detailed notes here and beautifully printed. Yeah, it's done in this one is done in the form of a diary. It's called the chapter is called Official Competitions. And here she is advertising the book with the publisher. He's based up in Scotland, Agard. There he is. It's nice to see him smile because in a lot of the pictures he looks rather over serious. I don't mean that unkindly, but he does. He takes his work extremely seriously, and his books are models of how things should be done. Here she is, presumably with her son, on the beautiful morning of the 4th of August, sorry, the 10th of August 2004. My first child, a boy named Oliver, was born. And there he is with Mum. Well, that's 2004. He'd be grown up now. I think of her still as a little girl, only to discover that she's got a son. Here she is on the cover. Do not be fooled. This is a businesswoman that plays chess. This is not all this business about chess playing machine, and even worse, towel in the skirt. I mean, that's supposed to be attributed to Smyslov. Well, Smyslov is dead now, and I hope that sort of, I mean, give me strength. Did he really say that? I don't like that. I wish I hadn't said it. Here we have a book by Laszlo Polgar. And surprisingly, it's about, I always like to do this, don't I? It's about chess. It's got 5,334 problems, combinations, and games. And it has an introduction, which I'm sure it doesn't need, by Bruce Pandolfini. I always like to try and stick up for people, and Bruce Pandolfini has written some interesting books, and one of them, Chess Weapons, is one of my favorites for learners. In this, it's got mate in twos, mate in ones, and they're produced as only in a computer age you could do systematically. So once you get the hang of what the guys are trying to do, or the way that the presentation flows, and it does flow. It's not just, angular stop, stop, start. There's nothing here which that would deter or even confuse a competitive mind. And if you've got even a tenth of the books which I've shown here, and let me assure you, there's a lot of players, sometimes almost to the detriment of their own play, and certainly in an effort to compensate from not being a strong player, people have large chess book collections. I used to joke with my friend Ken Harmon. We went to a book sale in Camberley once, and he turned to me and said, "Have I got this book? Because you know more about my books than I." So it's quite good to just simply to wheel around and say to somebody, here's a good book, here's a good book. I've got one like it. I was in Eton College for a problems solving day, and there was it really was expensive, about £15 or something. And I was convinced that there were two of them, and I had the one and not the other. And I bought the book, brought it home, proudly put it up on my shelf. Turns out I got it already. Doesn't have to matter. I'm sure I can find someone that would like it, but I don't like necessarily selling these things off. But there we are. These games are presented according to squares on the board. He uses Rabar indexes. The fonts are rather small, but because he has a nice lot of diagrams, it's not a massive handicap. The best thing to do, they always say you can play through the games without using a set, but I've never been strong enough to be able to do that. I think I'll bring out one that says you can play through the games using a set, because what's the point of having one if you don't even use it? So there you go. Something like 6,000 games, and just about every play in creation must in some small way have been represented here, I should think. And the bibliography extends to about, well, I haven't counted them, but maybe 400 titles, some of which we would have looked at, but most of which we wouldn't. And that's the fun of chess, because it just goes on and on and on. A bit like me, really. There we are. It's called Chess. 5,334 problems, combinations, and games. Black Dog Publisher is the publisher. I really recommend it. The sort of thing you could have chained up in an old-style London telephone box, because you used to see telephone directories as if you could do that now in phone boxes, and people used to write things on them, cut things into the covers. So maybe you could do that with this. It's a big book. I don't rate it highly, but it's part of the picture of the phenomenon that was and is, and I hope in the future still will be, the Polgars of Hungary. Thank you for listening. This has been Chess Comedy Books. I can't, as usual, I think it's 37. I think it's Chess Comedy Books 37. Let's have a quick look. Yes, it is. And we've been talking about the Polgars. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.